What's up, ladies and gents? Today on the podcast, we have Natalka Mackay, and she's talking about her awesome new program that takes veterans under the water using scuba gear to help recuperate from PTSD. Did you know that just for listening to the Hard to Kill podcast, you're going to get some perks? Yeah, that's right. The first perk that comes to mind is getting some really good, high quality meat in you. So if you head to butcherbox.ca, you can get some grass-fed, grass-finished beef that is just top notch. They got steaks, they got burgers, they got bones. They got everything you need in order to consume some high quality meat and get some high quality protein into you. So once you go to butcherbox.ca, on your first order, you can get $10 off by dropping the code MORROW10. That's MORROW 10, and get yourself some fresh, awesome meat delivered right to your house today and start 2021 with some awesome meat. Hey, I'm going to fill you in on something. 70% of Canadians are vitamin D deficient. You need to get on that because more than likely you're deficient. And the reason why that's important is because vitamin D has been shown to help increase testosterone levels in men. But not only that, it helps reduce the severity of things like COVID-19 and respiratory disorders. How much do you need? You need about 3,000 IUs. The pills at the grocery store are not going to do it. We've only got about 250 in there. You got to be popping pills like a maniac. If you head to onnit.com, you can check out their vitamin D3 spray, and every spray is 250 IUs. I drink that stuff like nobody's business, like a baller in a club. So does my family, because I want to make sure that we have awesome vitamin D levels during the winter months here in Canada. So if you head to onnit.com and drop in MORROW into the coupon area for your purchase, you're going to get a nice little discount just for listening to the podcast. You're welcome, by the way. So head to onnit.com, drop in MORROW for all your purchases, not just vitamin D, and start living a healthier 2021 right away.
Welcome to the Hard to Kill podcast, the go-to podcast for military, LEO, and EMS professionals, sharing ideas and experiences from around the world to make you hard to kill. Here's your host, Dave Morrow.
All right, folks, sitting down here with Natalka Mackay, and she was a contact again from one of the cool people in my network. So shout out to Dave Sutcliffe for putting us in contact. And Natalka's got a really interesting program going on. We'll get into it in the podcast. But first and foremost, Natalka, thanks for sitting down on the podcast today. And why don't you give the listeners just a little taste of where you're coming from and what you're up to these days?
Yeah, so thanks for having me. I live in Ottawa right now, and what I'm doing is I've started a nonprofit organization called Under the Surface, and we offer therapeutic scuba sessions for military veterans and first responders and others that have PTSD, chronic pain, really any kind of mental or physical injuries. Using scuba diving as a form of therapy has been really successful for 10 years now in the US and in the UK, and there's nothing here in Canada. So we are the first program that's dedicated to therapeutic scuba diving, and I'm super excited to tell you all about it.
That's awesome. So you're a first responder yourself?
Yes, I'm a paramedic.
Okay, cool. How long have you been doing that for?
I'm retired.
Okay.
Officially. I worked out in Peel region, so it's Brampton, Mississauga in Ontario, for over 9 years. About 6.5 years ago now, we moved to Ottawa. My husband's a military, or was military, is released now, but we had gotten posted to Ottawa, so I had left my job and I have a son, but I had a daughter in that time during our posting. She was just 3 weeks born when we moved to Ottawa. So I decided not to get back on the truck. Just the lifestyle was a little difficult and stressful. The hours were long, and I had two small kids. And my husband's injuries had worsened at the time as well. So he wasn't able to do too much. So I just decided to retire from being an active paramedic on the truck and turned to teaching.
Okay.
So I teach a bunch of first aid courses for heart and stroke, Red Cross, and others.
Okay. Right on. Right on. So what was the inspiration then to start something in the water with scuba diving of all things?
Yeah. So I've been scuba diving for over 20 years, and really I love it more than anything. Well, I love my kids and my husband a little more.
That's assumed. I say it all the time. Like, oh, my favorite thing in the world is, and then my wife's like, you mean me and the kids, right? Like, yeah, honey, you know that's what I love.
Yeah. Besides them, my favorite
Yeah.
thing to do is scuba dive. I love it. I fell in love with it the first time I went, and I actually spent most of my 20s, late 20s and early 30s before I got married, traveling all over the world and diving. And so, it's a huge passion of mine, and kind of had to put a pause on it for a bit when, you have young kids and you live in Canada. The season's fairly short. I'm not too into the really cold weather diving like a lot of people are. So anyways, I've always been, wanting to really just get back into diving again. Um, and at the time, it was a couple of years ago, my husband had just had his first back surgery. There's a lot of things he wasn't able to do. And we were talking a lot about traveling and how we couldn't wait till the kids were old enough to start diving again. And in the States at the time, there was a big boom in using scuba diving as a form of therapy for military veterans.
Hmm.
So all these organizations started popping up all over the US. Every state has at least one or two
Really?
organizations that started dedicating scuba diving for veterans. And in the past 10 years, it's just proven to be remarkable for their mental and physical health. And so my husband at the time, it was just trying to catch on, and he's like, you should do this. Because I don't have enough things to do, right?
Right. Right.
Mom, two young kids, a broken husband. Sure, let's start a scuba program and take it nationwide. And I kind of laughed it off at first, but then thought about it more and more, and really realized it's actually a really good fit. I mean, how much better could we understand the need for a program like this, with me being a paramedic, my husband being a veteran medically released for PTSD and chronic injuries, transitioning out of the military, being an avid scuba diver and a scuba instructor, having the medical background to sort of cater to people who have mental and physical injuries. It just kind of made sense. I was like, yeah, I should totally do this. And so that's sort of where the idea was born.
Pretty sweet. Typically the biggest, most impactful things that anybody could ever do are based on their passions, right? So clearly scuba diving is one of them, above your, but besides your kids and your husband, of course.
Yeah.
And so I'm a curious guy, and but my level of proficiency in the water, I did my French is the baptême. What's it in English? The first kind of dive that you do with a scuba instructor, right? We did it of all places in the Jacques Cousteau Conservatory in Guadeloupe. So it was a really cool place to do it, but I definitely sucked at it. Like I grew up in the water, though. It's not because I don't like the water, but I had a really hard time getting accustomed to the gear, and my ears wouldn't pop, and I was just like, man, I don't like this.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to know, how does being in the water, learning presumably a new skill, I presume you're taking mostly people that are like neophytes that haven't really done scuba diving before, maybe like me, maybe done one session. So when you get in the water, and what is it about the actual process of learning how to scuba dive that it's beneficial for recovery?
Yeah. So scuba sort of benefits on three main areas. So first, just mentally. If you imagine, what's one thing you think of if you go underwater? Even with scuba gear or no scuba gear, just you go under the water. What's the first thing you feel or think?
Um, Things it's like, how long can I for? Because I'm kind of, next thing is like, oh, I love this. Let's just take it when I was underwater with all the gear on, like got my scuba gear. I was like, this is a whole world I've never experienced before. This is really cool.
Yes. Yeah.
That's
And a
that
lot
was
of
it.
yeah, and a lot of people just, you're just like, oh my God, I'm underwater for a long period of time. And a lot of people describe it as being peaceful because all the noise goes away when you go underwater. Even if you don't have scuba gear, you dive to the bottom of the pool. It's silence, or there's still noise, but it's a different kind of noise, right? It's really peaceful. And so imagine if you have a regulator in your mouth and you're breathing, and all you hear is your own breathing and the bubbles, and it's meditative. And so it's immediately calming for most people. I mean, if you have a bit of anxiety about it, that's fine. You can something you can overcome with practice, but generally right away you just feel just peaceful. And a lot of veterans are saying, especially the ones with PTSD, they're like, just the noise goes away. Just you don't think about anything else. You're sort of in the moment. So it's scuba diving is really being compared to yoga in that way, where you can just kind of be out of a normal element. But also mentally, it is a technical sport. So like you said, you have all this gear and these skills you have to learn. And so I don't know. I mean, most of us that are in the military or first responders, we're type A personalities. We're a little bit of adrenaline junkies, and we like to learn things that are technical and be a bit more adventurous in our activities. And so scuba diving really appeals to that side of us as well, because it's something that you're learning and you feel a sense of accomplishment. And for those with physical injuries, if we have an amputee or someone who's paralyzed, just the freedom that they find when they get in the water, the first time they might be out of their wheelchair. When you're on land, it's different. You've got gravity, you've got restrictions, but once you get in the water, you're weightless and you're buoyant. And for people with chronic pain, it's actually showing that, they being at depth and breathing in that extra air or oxygen in the air tank is actually taking away people's pain, not just short term, but long term. And so that to me is another fascinating part of it, is that a lot of research is being done as to why it's affecting people in that way as well. And just feel good endorphins. I mean, you're doing something fun, and if you're in open water, you see cool things, whether you see fish, or if you're down south, you see coral, or on the east or west coast of Canada, like there's lots of things to see. So mentally, it's wonderful. Second, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, actually, I'm sorry to interrupt there. You're on a roll, but are all your programs, are you doing them all up here in Canada, or do you go on like special like trips to down south where it's nice and warm?
Yes, there will be all of the above.
Okay, cool.
In the plans, yes. So that's the mental aspect of it. Physical aspect, well, it's a physical activity, right? It's exercise. And again, for those that are wheelchair bound or have physical injuries, like my husband's got a whole bunch of herniated discs in his back. He's had surgery twice. There's a lot of sports he can't do safely. I always say you're broken enough to be injured, but you're not injured enough to be totally broken. And so there's, he has to be careful with what kind of things he does, because he can hurt himself worse. But diving, I mean, water, you can get in the water and you're buoyant and weightless. And it's just a great form of cardiovascular exercise. It gets your muscles moving, the resistance in the water. And so there's lots of physical aspects of scuba diving that are terrific.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last is social. So, a lot of veterans, when they transition out of the military, and even myself, as a paramedic, like when I left the road and I left my job, I really missed my peeps, my peers.
Yeah.
We get so close with the people that we work with. My husband, his military boys and girls are like his family, right? And me too. When I left and I couldn't see my partner every day for 12 hours. I mean, I spent more time with my partners at work than I did my husband at the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so you lose that social connection. You're really disengaged and you feel kind of lost. And what's awesome about scuba diving is it is a social sport. Like, you can't do it alone. You can, but you're not supposed to. It's very much a social activity. You're supposed to always dive with a buddy. And even like when I was traveling all over the world in my late 20s, I traveled by myself, and people thought I was crazy. They're like, how can you travel all over the world all alone? Like, aren't you lonely? Aren't you scared? And I'm like, no, I'm a scuba diver. I always meet tons of people that I'm still connected with today, from all over the world. So, that social aspect and why I wanted to do the program with Under the Surface specifically for veterans and first responders is that we just get each other right away. And it's a value of that peer support that I think is really important. So, and it's something for the whole family too. Like, again, you have to be 8 years old to start scuba diving in a swimming pool. And then 10 years old, you can get your junior open water and start diving with some restrictions. So like, we can't wait to get our kids in the water with us. And it's going to be something that we can finally do as a family, because there's a lot of things my husband can't do with the kids.
Right.
And
right.
so, yeah, so that social aspect. So mental, physical, social, it's just, you can see why it's so therapeutic and why it works so well for veterans and first responders.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And yeah, like you were mentioning too, I mean, that concept of learning a new technical skill, that's all we do. And that's where you get, whether you want to call it a flow state, at least for me anyways, when I'm learning something that I need to learn this because if I don't learn it properly, I could get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And being underwater, right, with all your gear and your tanks and stuff like that, there's still an element of danger, which, you talked about being an adrenaline junkie, right? Like that's the allure. So I can see why, all those three components, the mental, the physical, and the social, they're so important, and it keeps your mind active because you're learning something new in that context of a team, which must be just awesome.
Yeah.
So I touched on, where you're doing the actual scuba sessions, and are you, like, obviously COVID has put a damper on a lot of things, but typically you said you run a national program. So is this like from coast to coast? There's or like there's events going on that individuals can register for and start learning how to scuba dive?
Yeah, that's going to be the plan. So right now I'm in Ottawa. So because of COVID, I'm going to keep things local for now, because numbers are going to have to stay small and that sort of thing. So we have to do things safely, of course. So yeah, Ottawa's going to be sort of the starting point. I'm hoping to launch some events this spring, summer, if COVID allows. But yeah, eventually, I mean, this can be duplicated anywhere across the country. And that is sort of the plan, is to have this for anybody who's interested. So the scuba program I'm developing is there's kind of a few parts to it. So I do have a training component. So as an instructor, I'm a PADI open water scuba instructor. I'm also a Handicap Scuba Association instructor. So if people are looking to get a full certification, we can do that through Under the Surface. It's just much like any other dive shop would have you do. It's just the difference is that we can do it. We can cater to your needs, whatever it may be, depending on your injuries. And if you want, to bring family with you, or, whether it be a spouse or another support person, that sort of thing. So, and again, it's like the peer support. So we try to keep things inclusive to veterans and first responders, just in groups.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that side of it. But I'm also developing a program where I have therapeutic scuba sessions. And so what we're going to be doing is there's going to be a first one is going to be a therapeutic scuba experience. So because a lot of people don't want to just be certified to dive and then go on their own and explore the diving world, but they still want to have the benefits of scuba diving as a form of therapy. And so the therapeutic scuba sessions are going to be focused on being in pools. And so there's going to be an experience session where it's for those people that don't know how to dive or have never dove before. Just a really basic, like you mentioned, you sort of did like a discover scuba diving sort of thing. It's just in the pool, getting familiar with your equipment and how to use it. And then I want to provide therapeutic sessions in which they're going to be like an hour to 2 hour long. Again, they can be catered to privately to specific needs, or it'll be in a larger group setting. And these sessions are going to be composed of some like skills and drills, therapeutic exercise. So, and like team building activities. So it's going to be sort of on a weekly basis, and people could just come and explore scuba diving and just gain strength, and just use it as a social therapeutic activity. And then the third part we're going to be offering is I call it the flotilla sit session. Did you know what a flotilla is by any chance?
It's a Navy term. I'm an Army guy.
It is.
Don't know. You're going to have to fill me in.
So a flotilla is actually a group of sea turtles, but it's also a fleet of Navy ships. And so actually our logo is a turtle, which we chose for a couple of reasons. Mainly one being is that we found it significant that a turtle is really awkward on land, right? They're slow and cumbersome, and they just don't seem like they belong. But then when they
flip them over and they're finished.
They're like stuck, and then when you get them underwater though, they're like my favorite thing to see when I'm scuba diving, because it's like they're just so different. They float around and they swim like they're confident and they belong there, and they're buoyant. And I just found that was a great metaphor for exactly what we're trying to do with Under the Surface, right?
Very cool.
But anyway, so a flotilla sit session stands for flotilla is a group of turtles. And sit stands for surface interval time. So that's sort of the time where you have in between dives where you rest, recover, chit chat, switch tanks over, that sort of thing. And that's where all the socialization goes on during scuba diving, is during those surface intervals. So we named it the flotilla sit session. And what it's going to be is basically like a peer support group. So anyone who's gone through the Under the Surface Scuba program, and we can again take it nationwide. We're going to have them sort of meet once a month just to kind of check in, have a chat. Might have some guest speakers, whether it be on topics of health and wellness, or different scuba diving topics that people might be interested in. So there's those three parts to the scuba program that we're offering, plus the training side of things. And yeah, I'm pretty excited about it.
Well, yeah, I could definitely tell that. That's a really cool endeavor. Just as a little anecdote, during my dive, my one and only dive, um, we got I can't even tell you how many feet we're at, but we're getting deeper than I've ever been before, but it wasn't crazy deep, right? And then under the sand, all of a sudden, this like, and I don't know, I don't know much enough about biology. A tortoise, or I don't know what it is, big. It was I call it a turtle. It was huge, and it just like popped up right in front of me, and was just like just this majestic like animal just like floating towards me. I was like, whoa. And that's when I was like, wow, this is really cool. Like I've never seen this part of the planet, let alone this massive turtle coming towards me. So that was really cool. And so yeah, when he's mentioned turtle, I was like, oh yeah, that was my turtle experience. I had such a good time. It was really cool. So clearly you got a vision moving forward. And yeah, let's take a guy like myself who doesn't really have much experience. It would be, if I understand correctly, you can do like the therapeutic stuff where you can show up and you do a dive and you hang out with the people that are there. But if I understand correctly, you can also start getting qualified too, right? So you can use it as therapy, but you can also use it as like, no, I'm really interested in this. I can move forward and actually get my open water diver certification.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, and like you said, you kind of we're a little anxious about it and that. So the beauty is, I mean, we can take our time. There's no rush. You can
Mhm.
just come and try it out in the pool and see how things go. And if, you need more time to get comfortable, you just keep coming back for a while. And then, yeah, if you want to get certified or if you're already certified, because a lot of veterans and first responders already scuba dive,
Mhm.
but they don't use it as a therapeutic session on a weekly basis. So if you're already certified, you can join the program on the therapeutic side as well. That's perfect, because then you're already that one step ahead and can just benefit from the therapeutic exercise of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, this whole side of, and what the reason why I started my own business was the concept of fitness and health was a side of recovery that wasn't being covered all from the if you want to talk about the Army side or the Canadian Armed Forces side. It was a glaring hole in what I was doing, because I thought I was fit, I thought I was strong and everything like that, and I was seeing my psychologist, and it just felt like there was something missing. And I realized it was really because I came from an Army background, a sports background, but I was working on recovery, but I was only working on what I found was basically one half of that, which is the mind. But I wasn't working on the body nearly as much. And so that's kind of how I got started. I was like, well, this is something that I think really needs to be covered off. And we can't just assume that recovery is all done in an office with a therapist. So it's cool to see that, at least here in Canada, people like yourself are starting to get people aware that you got to move the body. The body is really, really important if we're going to get better upstairs. So that's really commendable. And it's interesting to hear like there's a movement in the States. Like you said, I think every state has at least one program, and you're the only one right now in Canada that's offering this. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Okay, so plenty of room to grow here, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome. So where do you see the next steps once eventually things start to open up? You're in Ottawa right now. How do you see yourself reaching the rest of Canada? Because obviously we can't do this virtually. Like I can do what I need to do virtually. I can tell people to do push-ups online. That's easy enough. But physically somebody has to be next to an instructor to actually get the benefit of the scuba therapy. So how do you have you thought about how to roll that out, or like where you want to go next, and like how do you want to get that implemented?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a lot of divers across Canada, a lot of dive shops across Canada, and a lot of, like I said, military veterans or even people still in CAF, that are divers and that are quite passionate about this. Since I started um, sort of telling people about this program and my idea, I've got a huge list of people, not only that want to participate in the program itself, but people that want to help. they're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I want to help. Like, let me know when you get here, and I want to be involved. So, I mean, it's just a matter of getting the right resources in the right places where there's supply and demand for the program, and then training people to sort of put on the sessions. I'm developing that program as we speak, and yeah, it's just it'd be fairly easy to do. I just need people that are interested in doing it, and then qualifying them into actually putting on the program,
Mm-hmm.
and then letting people just go for it.
That's awesome. Now you're a nonprofit, if I understand correctly, right?
Yes.
So do you accept, obviously is there a fee for a veteran to join, or do you run based off donations? What's your method in that sense?
Well, right now there is no funding to speak of, which
Let's make that a priority
is
for this
there, right?
podcast. We'll get some
So,
funding for you.
I mean, it's tough. It's tough. Like when I first started this idea as a nonprofit, I reached out to a lot of the organizations that were in the States, and they all kind of told me the same thing. They're like, good luck. It's worth all the work, but you're sort of in this catch-22 where to run the program, I need money, I need funding to get the program started, but um, to have anybody give you money, they want the program started to
Yes.
prove that it can be a success, or that there's
Mm-hmm.
demand for it. So
Mm-hmm.
you're kind of stuck in this spot. Um, Ideally, eventually, what I'd like to do is have the therapeutic experience sort of covered with the profits that are going on from the training sessions,
Mm-hmm.
and the therapeutic sessions. So that would be something that people could pay for as far as a membership goes, or just per session.
Mm-hmm.
And the cost of that, I'm not sure yet, because I'm still trying to work out details on, getting pool rentals and equipment rentals. So my goal is right now is to, yeah, if there's donations, whether it be monetary donations or equipment donations.
Mm.
If you're in the Ottawa area and you have, old scuba equipment or snorkel equipment, so masks, fins, snorkels, BCDs, regulators, anything that's still in decent order, maybe you're just looking to upgrade your stuff, and instead of selling it, if you can donate it to Under the Surface, we could definitely put it to use, because every little piece of that will keep the cost down for everybody. And
Right.
I'd like to keep the once a month scuba experience, to introduce this to new people. I'd like to have that covered for people, just so that they can try it. But of course, it costs money to rent a pool and rent equipment. Um, so yeah, I'm working on a few connections there. I've got some grant applications in, so we'll see what happens in that respect. But there will be an associated cost. I'm gonna try to keep it as minimal as possible, though.
All right. Yeah. So yeah, once we get this out to the airways, folks, if you do know, or yourself, you have equipment, or you want to donate time or money or equipment to Natalka's awesome project, that's the point of the podcast, right? We're here to support the community. So yeah, we'll try to get you some of those donations there, Natalka, once this goes out in a few weeks, to get you sorted for this awesome cause. Because yeah, and I experienced the same thing too, right? Like I have a awesome program that's launching through the Quebec Veterans Federation Foundation for female veterans. But in order to get to there, I had to have proof of concept. Which, it took me well over a year, right, to get some proof of concept. And, and unfortunately, like, you can't just have everything for free if you want to be in existence, right? There has to be,
Yeah.
some funding at some point. So I'm slowly getting to the point where I hope to have a full-on national level program, but it's one step at a time. And so I'm thankful for the program I have now, and I'm sure you'll get there too, because once they realize that there's a huge benefit, and you've got a proof of concept, then that's when it really takes off. So if we can help out with that here at the Hard to Kill podcast, be our pleasure and our honor to do so.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
I do
So,
have a GoFundMe page.
okay, great.
If you go to the website, so
Hmm.
underthesurfacescuba.org, I have all of the social media links, links to the GoFundMe page, and any contact information. You can find everything there. So if anyone's either interested in participating in the program or helping out with the program, or if, like you said, can donate time, equipment, or money, anything like that, or have any questions, just send me an email or connect over
Awesome.
social media. That would be
Awesome. Yeah.
awesome.
I'm looking at the site right now. So yeah, that's underthesurfacescuba.org, folks. We're going to drop that link in the show notes for you, so that anybody can go grab them. And then when we post on socials, we'll make sure to link to your website so that people can get dialed in and start not only registering but helping out as well. So Natalka, some final thoughts. Like, this is an awesome program. It's cool to see people in the I call it sheepdog community taking action and making a difference in the community. So like any parting thoughts on the program and just what your vision is for the future?
I've been putting this together for 2 years, over 2 years now, and I'm still as excited about it now as I was when I first got the idea, and even more so because it's changed and developed into something that I think is really unique. And everybody, all the veterans and first responders in the US and the UK and all these organizations have been doing such amazing things. And I can't wait to bring this to Canadians. And, my husband and I were laughing and saying, this is like, don't mistake, this is just as therapeutic for us as it is for everybody we're trying to help. Because like you said, there's so many amazing veteran programs going on by other veterans
Mhm.
because we know what we need. We understand what we're going through and the gaps in the system, and we're filling those gaps ourselves, right? Veterans for veterans. I mean, and I just can't wait. I know there's lots of great ideas out there, and I'm following what other people are doing as well. And I think it's really amazing that we can really support each other and support all the programs that are going on, veterans doing things for veterans and filling those gaps and getting these ideas and getting each other talking and just offering each other that peer support, because there's nothing worse than feeling like we're alone in all of this. There's nothing better than speaking to another spouse who is going through what we're going through, or my husband talking to another veteran who's injured. It's just, that's the best part, is that we can bring a community together. And I know right now we can't necessarily do things face to face as much, but we do have other avenues. And my goal is to see, like you mentioned near the beginning of the podcast, is that I see this becoming a huge scuba diving community and planning trips and events, not just within Canada, but abroad as well. And so I just can't wait to share my passion for diving and the lifestyle that it can bring, and just showing everybody that there's just so many things that we can still do, even after we're injured, whether it be mentally, physically, most of us both.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I'm super excited, and I'm really thankful for you for letting me come on your show and just telling more people about it. So spread the word.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's a really powerful vision. And it's cool to hear every time I get somebody like yourself on the podcast that's putting something new together, because it's scary, right? Like you said, like you can see that there's a need here, and you've got the qualifications, and you kind of went through the whole like decision making process. Like, wait, I'm really good. I can teach people how to dive. My husband is a veteran. I'm a member of the EMS world. Why don't I just do this? Like, clearly this is a thing that can happen. And it takes, people like you that make that first step. And it's always the hardest, right? Going into uncharted waters, no pun intended, into this whole new like therapeutic field. So I'm sure it's going to be a resounding success, and any help that we can provide to get this off the ground and hitting those benchmarks faster and earlier. And this does touch on you mentioned veterans coming together and providing the solutions that we need as veterans. And I'm going to coin this term as my own. I'm going to trademark it. I'm calling it the veteran renaissance. And I've mentioned it a few times on the podcast before, where veteran run businesses and initiatives, and definitely it's confirmation bias, because obviously I'm in the space and I'm looking at it all the time. But even confirmation bias or not, there is a lot of activity in the veteran world when it comes to nonprofits and companies that have been popping up over the last 10 years, which are doing awesome work. And we all want to give back. And that's really cool to see, because I think that's where we can have the most impact, because we know what the needs are in the veteran community, and we're filling those holes slowly but surely. So
yeah, absolutely.
Awesome to have you on. And again, folks, that's underthesurfacescuba.org. Head over there, have a look at the website. It's nice and fresh, easy to navigate. All the links are there for Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and you can go see the GoFundMe page there as well. And let's get Natalka some donations and some gear and some manpower and some money flowing into her awesome organization. So Natalka, thanks for showing up on the show. Really appreciate it. And folks, everybody else that's out there, don't forget, train hard, fight easy. Catch you on the flip side. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. You can find out more about training, nutrition, and mindset at davemorrow.net. Be sure to like us on Facebook and Instagram at Dave Morrow PT. And don't forget, strong people are hard to kill.